Hello, folks. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you might be at this time listening to me. This is Dr. Judith. I bring you greetings from Georgia, and I want to share with you on another topic, something that's very important to me, very dear to my heart, and something that I believe impacts a lot of people in our society. And as believers, it impacts us, and we have to be careful how we navigate this thing called divorce. It is, unfortunately, it's been scientifically proven, or at least research has proven, that the churchgoers, are divorcing at the same rate that the secular world is. Those are bad figures. That's very negative information. But if it is even close to the truth, it's sad. And I'm a part of that number. And I am no longer sad about being divorced. I have learned a lot from being divorced. I have a term that came to me recently that I've been using, and the term is I've divorced well. I said it in an earlier broadcast that I would share this with you, so I'm sharing that today, that divorce is painful, it's difficult, but if we were to be honest with ourselves, the marriages that we get into that lead to divorce, we knew ahead of time we shouldn't have done it. And that's something that I have a big problem when I counsel people and I share with people, that we don't like admitting that a lot of the things that we end up messing up in, we knew when we started it was going to be a mess. We saw it ahead of time. But the egos in us, and that's women, not just men, and I dare say I've learned that women to some extent have larger egos than men do. I believe that. I work a lot with women. I've worked tremendously with women over the years. And I see the ego issues that we carry, and we pretend we don't carry them, but it's there. And I've met some honest women along my journey who admits, maybe not willingly at first, but admits that their ego is out of control. And when your ego is out of control, I was listening to this pastor earlier, was talking about when you build a house, if you build it without God involved, it's going to mess up. It's going to fall apart. So we build these marriages on our own desires, our own ego issues, our own what we didn't get when we were children, what we didn't get from our father, what we didn't get, whatever it might be. And I'm not saying that men are not blame, that they go without blame in this regard, by no means. I have another issue, which I'll talk another time, about men and why they allow themselves to get married and to get into these weddings when they really know they're not equipped, and they're not really, some of them not even interested. So that's for another time. But today I want to talk about myself in terms of having been divorced. When I got divorced the first time, I was extremely angry. And I never knew I had that kind of anger. But I was angry because I had failed in my own sight. And I did not have a relationship with the Lord at that time, certainly nothing close to what I have with him now. I knew of him and I participated, we have the weekend relationship with him, and, we go visit him a few hours on a Sunday. That's what I had at that time. When I met my husband, that's definitely what I had with the Lord. And as we progressed and eventually got married, definitely I was not in full relationship with the Lord. I would visit him on weekends. And so, but my heart was available. And I didn't know that, and I would find that out over a period of time. So, and I found this in the church, sadly, that when you're divorced, people won't even ask you in the church. They won't even include you in certain functions. And functioning, they will not include you in certain ministries. They won't include you in certain things because you're divorced. Now, it's not the same for divorced men, but for divorced women, I've seen it, I've experienced it. People actually look down on you as if, I mean, she must be no good. Something must be wrong with her. She can't be a godly woman. You can't have her working with women and she's divorced. And I don't beg to differ. I scream to differ. The truth is that not everybody divorces well. And by that I mean some people, many people divorce and never learn why they got married, to who they got married to, and why they got divorced. And I can tell you today, this is the 15th of June, 2019, and I can tell anyone I divorced well. Because after divorcing, God had time with me. I was angry enough, I was desperate enough, I was confused enough, I was dysfunctional enough to reach out to him to find out what's wrong with me. I wasn't blaming my ex-husband. I was looking at me. I wasn't blaming me per se, but I was looking at me, and that's where God wanted the focus. And I can shout it out loud to the world. I have become a better woman, a better person, because I learned. And one of the biggest things that I learned in becoming divorced, I learned what marriage is. See, like many of us, I grew up with my parents being married and spent most of their time fighting, physically, emotionally, mentally fighting each other. And so what they depicted as marriage was not what God says marriage is. Nothing close. And that's true for most of us. Most of us will not admit it, but it is true for most of us. So I grew up with this distorted view of what marriage and fidelity and all that stuff was. I didn't know. So when I got married, I did that using the information that I saw and got from my parents and other people around. But it was mostly from my parents. So when I married, and I promise you, I'm not blaming them. They did as good as they could with the information they had. So I'm not blaming them. I learned. So part of being divorced, and when I say I've divorced well and even happily divorced, is that I learned, and I'm still learning, what marriage is according to God. I was ignorant. I had no idea what I was doing. The first time. And the second time I knew better, but I was still in the dark. And my ego was involved. And the second time, more than the first time, my ego was involved, and I also was tired of being alone. And I was looking for a father for my child. And that's the story of so many women. But I don't have a problem being honest about those things, especially if it can help someone. So what I learned, one of the first things I heard, and it came out of my mouth, I learned, and I continue to learn what marriage is. So all this stuff that, people are talking about, oh, you're divorced, you can't do this. Like I said, I don't beg to differ. I'm screaming and differing at the same time. The reality is, I now know what marriage is, so I can say what marriage is not. And so I am better equipped to show somebody, especially someone who has never been married, what to avoid, the pitfalls, the sacrifice that you have to make. It's not a 50-50 proposition. It's 100% on both sides proposition. It's a covenant that you make not just with your husband or your wife, but with God in the center. That's what marriage is. Marriage is an awesome, wonderful thing. When I say that, I'm telling you, I am excited just saying those words. It is such a wonderful thing, a combination of so many different kind of relationships in one. Relationship with God, relationship, we're talking about agape love, we're talking about the love, the eros love, we're talking about all that kind of filial, all that stuff is in marriage. Because you have to be a friend, you have to be a lover, you have to be a wife or a husband. Some days you have to be like a sibling to each other. Marriage is a multifaceted relationship that it's God's idea. It's his original idea. And I'm telling anybody, if God blesses me to do it one last time, it's going to be phenomenal because I know now what marriage is. And for sure, I know what it's not. So I share that with you guys. I share that with you folks because I want to impress us. I want to remind us that the big weddings and the great honeymoon and all this stuff, it has its place. And if you can financially afford it, hey, go ahead. But I'm telling you, put emphasis on your marriage. When God leads you to people who like me, have divorced well, don't turn them away. Don't say, well, they got divorced. What can they show me? Don't do that. Now, there are some people, and I've met some, and I've heard of some, who got divorced 3 times and still don't know what marriage is. And they want to do it again. No, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about someone like myself whom God has used, has drawn to his side after failed marriages and said, daughter, I want to show you some things. Now, I am a proponent for marriage, and I promise you, I'm telling you, I did not know what marriage was. When I entered it the first time, the second time was a little better. But I know what it is. And I can tell you, I would rather be alone with God for the rest of my life on this earth than enter into something that doesn't even look like him. Because when you come to him and you know him and he starts teaching you about your value, you start saying, no, Lord. And I've said that to him. Let your perfect will prevail. I love men. I absolutely adore them. I love companionship. I love relationship. I'm good at communicating. That includes listening. And so I would love to be able to do it his way. But the good news, the really good news for me in divorcing well is that I've learned that I would rather stay in full relationship with the Lord for the rest of my life on this earth than just enter any kind of relationship to say I have one. It is not healthy for anyone. And so I wait on the Lord. It is his plan. Jeremiah 29:11. If he plans for me to do this again, then it will be his idea, and I know he will send me someone phenomenal, and it will not be perfect, but it will be wonderful. So, like I said, I've divorced well. I have much to share with others because I know now what I shouldn't do. And I know that you should not get married just because you are lonely or you're afraid you're going to be lonely. It is not the reason. I am 65 years old. I am still attractive. I'm still bright and soaring and growing and learning. I have a buoyancy. I have an excitement in me. I love life. Even when things are not exactly the way I want it to be. And I still want to dance. I want to travel. I'm not broken down. I'm not broken up. And God has given me beauty for ashes. And that's another reason why I know I divorced well. It's been wonderful as usual sharing with you. And I promise you that I'll share with you again. Until that time, keep stretching. Keep growing. Let God bring you out of ignorance. Let him work from the inside out. And until we meet again, walk good. This has been Dr. Judith.